to demonstrate to you that in a field which is the ITGs, the so-called ITGs, which was fairly conservative, you could do it differently, and I will try to demonstrate it in the coming 20 minutes. I'd like as well to thank Wolf and the entire team, to welcome Nexus, myself, and to have the possibility to share those key messages with you today. We have something in common with Wolf, is that at Nexus we are extremely focused, as you will see, on emerging, fast-growing markets. We are focused as well on mature markets. And I know Wolf for many years. I've been working with Wolf also indirectly for many years. And the focus of the Wolf team on the emerging markets is part of the Wolf DNA. And you will see it's part of Nexus DNA as well. So we really share that in common. Our companies, our respective companies have, I would say, a similar approach to the aftermarket. Now, in the coming 20 minutes, I will try to walk as well a bit, if you don't mind, so we can give some momentum to this presentation. The key message that I'd like to share with you is that there is no one aftermarket. There is an aftermarket in mature markets that doesn't look like the aftermarket in emerging markets. And that's what at Nexus we've tried to do, is to apply different recipes to different aftermarkets. You will see in 4 years' time it has enabled us to become the second largest ITG. I think, as I said to the team yesterday, we've done half of the job. So we are halfway, but I tried to share with you already where we are in 2018, and then share with you where we think we'll be in the coming years. Now, what is Nexus? Nexus, of course, is an alliance of distributors around the world. You'll see that we have over 1,500 companies in our group, but Nexus is primarily a growth accelerator, which means that we are targeting over 10% growth every year with our members and with our suppliers, among which Wolf. Now, we are not a growth accelerator, a simple growth accelerator. We're a growth accelerator for progressive companies. It means that we target first distributors that have an open mind, that are ready to move, and suppliers, partners that themselves have the appetite to move on and to see things a bit more open than some others that show too much conservativeness. So that's the mission of Nexus. That's a phrase that we repeat every day. We are a growth accelerator for progressive companies in the automotive industry, and that's the mindset of our alliance, of our community. That's the ambition. Beyond the mission is that wherever you are doing some aftermarket, in Chile, in Japan, in Botswana, in Belgium, we are there to support you as a distributor or as a supplier. We have a fairly big team. I'll share that with you a bit later. We are a decentralized organization, so we have offices on each continent, and our offices have really this as an ambition, is to respond within 24 hours to requests that are coming from suppliers and distributors. So that's typically something that you will see when we bring Nexus, I would say, on the forefront. We insist on that. Now, Nexus is, as I said, focused on two typologies of aftermarkets. We started to build up Nexus by a very strong focus on emerging markets. You all know our competitors, auto distribution and others. The focus on emerging markets was not there. And we thought, when we designed the business plan of Nexus, that we had something to do in Africa, we had something to do in the Middle East, we had something to do in China, we had something to do in Latin America, and that's typically where we have put the focus when we started to build the Nexus organization. We moved afterwards into mature markets, and you will see that we are handling mature markets with some kind of disruptive approach, but the priority initially, and that's really the DNA of Nexus, is emerging markets. So let's start with that side of our planet. If you look at sales of new cars between 2005 and 2017, you see overall that you have a very flat trend, even in Africa, India, Latin America and Russia. Even if those parts of the world are growing, you see that there is one country that is progressively representing 30% of the sales of new cars on this planet. This country is China. You see that with 30 million cars in 2017, China represents 30% of the sales of new cars on this planet. So you don't need to be a strategist to understand that this means aftermarket business, growing aftermarket business from 2020 onwards. We think that China will be the largest aftermarket field by 2025. So it was reasonable to think that investing time and resource in China for Nexus was not an unreasonable, I would say, strategic direction. Sorry, I think I went, okay. Now, if you look as well at the car park by 2025, you see that the Asian side here is constantly growing. Same thing. By injecting cars in China, and you have lots of European cars that are being injected in this market, this part of the car park needs to be addressed. You know, same thing. I'm insisting you don't need to be a McKinsey senior consultant to understand that there is some work to do. I can apply this to Latin America, I can apply this to Africa, I can apply this to the Middle East. Of course, the priority is here, but there is a tremendous task for an international trading group in emerging markets. Look at that number. This has been basically the reasons why we have engaged from day one in emerging markets. So I will pass some slides on a few countries where from day one we have been present. Our Turkish member is one of the founders of Nexus. He is today the largest distributor in Turkey, called Dynamic, a company of 135 million euro turnover. From day one, Turkey was in our plan. Now, I'd like to spend some time here because some of you know China, some of you don't know China. You don't need to go to China to make up your mind, but this market is in our priority since day one. We have now 7 employees in Shanghai. We have designed an organization there that is a very modern local organization. We have plenty of members, but we are working hand in hand on a day-to-day basis with the Chinese teams of all Nexus suppliers partners. So, I'd say with those numbers that I'm repeatedly, I would say, bringing to your awareness, we have capitalized progressively on this part of the aftermarket that was totally ignored by the industry, at least by the international trading groups, until 2014. You've had some initiatives in Africa, you've had some initiatives in China, but they were very minor compared to the challenge that was at stake. Now, this at the end counts, the size of the China aftermarket. As I told you, in 2025, for sure, China will be bigger than the US when it comes to the independent aftermarket. When you say all the focus that all the teams around the world have put on the US for years and years and years, we imagine that in 5 years, we have to equip ourselves to address a market that is bigger than North America. So we've done our piece of the work, and of course we're engaging lots of enthusiasm to focus on this market. And I insist on all the emerging markets around the world, but with priority to China by 2025. Now, let me say some words on the emerging markets at Nexus in the big picture. Today, Nexus, and this was a number, sorry, from 6 weeks ago when we made the slides. Today, Nexus has a turnover of 16 billion. I'm sorry, there's a mistake. It's not million, but billion. Our consolidated turnover globally is exceeding 16 billion euro. And close to 40% of our business is made in the so-called emerging markets. So we're the only organization on this planet, the only ITG, having basically a ratio of 40% on fast-growing markets, 60% on mature markets. Okay, so 16 billion and 40% of exposure on those markets that will count in the future. Now you see here basically that our largest piece today is the Middle East. Middle East is still a bit bigger than Asia. We are the only ITG present in the Middle East, so you won't find any other ITG in the Middle East. We have really taken, I would say, such a piece of the cake that it will be fairly difficult for others to enter. 10%. Asia is number 2. Latin America is number 3. When you look at this part of our business. Okay, so Asia is about to become number 1, but the Middle East, which is a core region for Nexus, is still number 1 when it comes to emerging markets. Now, there is something I'd like to insist. It looks very simple like this. You know, when we started in 2014 in a small office, starting to fly to China, to the Middle East, to Africa, etc., everybody was very skeptical about the capacity for an ITG to build up an organization based on a business that nobody really knew on the distribution side. Now, it has been tough, but there's something that you have to know, and it's valid as well for the business in which Wolf is evolving in. There is no business in emerging markets without education. It's not going to happen. You have to invest in education, and then the OE matching quality pedigree that Wolf is in, and that our members, suppliers are active in, can only happen with a focus on education. You know, why would a mechanic in Kenya put oil from Wolf and then put oil from company unknown in the industry? Why? Because of education. So we have spent lots of efforts over the past 5 years starting to build programs to educate our distributors, workshops, trainer programs. This year we're going to have 5,000 people going through what we call the Nexus Academy programs. 5,000 people. 5,000 people that represent lots of time, lots of resource, but that's the only way to take market share progressively in this part of the world. Nexus Academy was founded in 2015 with 4 pillars. We train the CEOs and the VPs and the head of procurement of our members. We train the buyers. We have a train-the-trainer program. And more importantly, we have a very strong workshop program. And that's the priority. The workshop at the end will decide if he puts a Wolf lubricant in the engine or if he puts company unknown by anybody. And this part of the business is our priority. That's where we are putting our focus. We are doing what we can, you could say, but what we can is obviously better than nothing. And lots of manufacturers today are following the dynamic that we are and that we have started to develop on the educational side at workshop level. As I said to you, our team is a decentralized team. You are maybe familiar with ITGs. Lots of ITGs have one team, a central team. From day one, we thought that we had to put our fingers, you know, in the business, on the field, on the floor, and we have defined a regional organization with regional leaders. You have here our regional, I would say, business developers. What is new from yesterday is that this team has now a global leader that we have appointed yesterday. This was announced yesterday. So we are going to professionalize progressively this team, because this team is working on a day-to-day with the Latin America teams of manufacturers and the Latin America members on a day-to-day basis. This is the secret of the success of Nexus. Without this team, there would be no Nexus today. We are as well organizing lots of events. We are an events machine, and Emmanuel, who is our brand communication director here, is following all the events that we do organize globally. We organize something like 25 events, global events in Abu Dhabi every year. We have in a few weeks a global event focused on heavy duty in Madrid, and we do organize lots of regional events. In those regional events, we try to increase, I would say, the interactions between our local members and the local teams of our global partners. That's a very heavy machine, but it's a machine that enables really, you know, to increase the interactivity between the two ingredients of organization, suppliers and distributors. So let me spend some time now on what you are maybe more familiar with, which is mature markets. Roughly Europe, US, a few countries in Asia. Now, you are for sure familiar with what we call the financial consolidation. You've heard about LKQ, you've heard about all the various players within this consolidation. I just wanted to share with you a snapshot, and that's a European snapshot. It's not even including North America. So since 2008, I don't know if you remember, but in Europe in 2008, we went into a recession. And while this recession was starting, the financial guys have started to get involved into the aftermarket. And since 2008, so roughly 10 years, we have seen LKQ coming into the market. We have seen, of course, Napa coming into the market with the acquisition of Alliance. And we have seen some other companies making acquisitions, such as SAG acquiring Automotive in Romania. So this business that was a family business became suddenly a business that was under the radar screen of the financial community. Now, this is changing the European aftermarket. It already changed the US aftermarket, but it's changing the landscape. I have to say that I'm a bit disappointed that the major consolidators today, the two major, are coming from North America. And I hope that some Europeans will have the courage to challenge the two Americans that are today taking market share day after day. Now, what I can tell you is that at Nexus we had a long debate, either watching the movie or getting involved. And a year ago we decided to get involved. We have created a small M&A team, and we have been involved recently on a fairly significant acquisition. So we are stepping into the consolidation cycle and getting involved in a number of dynamics within this landscape. So as I told you, if you want to be disruptive in Europe, you have to address this. You cannot just say, I'm an ITG, I'm watching the movie, and my members will leave because they are being purchased by LKQ or by another one. So we decided to be active on that one. And I will explain to you a bit more in detail. It's, of course, fairly confidential, but more in detail what we do. Of course, you know, in 2008, suddenly Oscaro came up, CAV-Z24 came up, Mr. Auto came up, ATP came up, Exist came up and disappeared. So a number of digital monsters have been flourishing in the industry, primarily B2C, as Zoran was saying, but we see now B2B web stores coming up. And of course, Amazon is there, eBay is big in Europe, so this is a mega trend that you cannot ignore. And the third mega trend is another one that is subject to lots of time, lots of resource and focus, is what we call access to the car-generated data, so the telematic, the remote control of the car, preventive maintenance, etc. So Nexus, being 4 years old in 2017, had to address this. It was new for us. You know, when we made our business plan, we didn't anticipate that LKQ would accelerate the pace, that you know, the web stores will become bigger, and that telematics will become a big thing. So we had to address it. Now, for M&A, as I told you, we have decided to create a small team that would primarily focus on providing a solution to some of our members that have succession problems, that want to divest, or that want to grow and need capital or need financing. So we have been involved lately on an acquisition. We are now involved in a number of other operations, but what I can tell you is that Nexus is involved. Okay, we won't leave the European landscape just to North America players. I have nothing against North America players, but I think that the Europeans have to wake up. It's very important that the industry in Europe wakes up, because if you just look at the product portfolio of Napa in the US, it's 80% private label. So, you know, if Bosch and others still want to sell parts in a Bosch box, they better wake up and play a role in this consolidation that is happening. And I said it personally to Bosch this morning. I expect the European industry to be a bit involved, because this is moving into a direction that has plenty of implications. On the digitalization front, we have had, I would say, long debates in Nexus, but we made at the end the conclusion fairly short. We have brought on board some web stores within the Nexus community. So ATP in Germany is a member. As an example, we have other web stores that are members of Nexus. So there is a digital community within the Nexus community already available. Now, the main innovation that we brought to the industry is that we have created a marketplace that is only available to Nexus members today, that enables Nexus members to make business between themselves. It's all digital. It has almost 1 million SKUs, and our members are capable to trade between themselves when they have to find a problem, when they have to solve a problem. We are not stimulating gray markets as such, but we want to make the life of our members more easy. I will give you a number that may surprise you, but the Nexus members in Europe buy 250 million euro to LKQ, to Intercars, and to GPC, 250 million euro, that we buy every year to Stahlgruber, to the subsidiaries of LKQ, to Intercars, and to GPC. 250 million euro is a criminal number for us. So with the marketplace we have designed, we try to bring part of this business back in the Nexus community. Okay, so this was launched mid-May. It's shaping up. We are going to strengthen this tool, and we'll see, maybe sooner or later we'll open the audience to outsiders. So last but not least, I told you to be disruptive, you have to address the telematic revolution. We are a customer of Caruso, we are a member of communication, and we are very active at the FIGFA in all the lobby activities that are happening at the moment at Brussels, because we are willing to make sure that the Brussels civil servants are going to give the keys to the independent aftermarket as well. Okay, if tomorrow Daimler, BMW are the only one to be capable to manage the data coming out of a car, the independent aftermarket is going to be extremely weakened. So there is at the moment a very strong lobby activity that we are behind through the FIGFA. Now, Nexus, as I told you, built its leadership on emerging markets, 40% of our business, on mature markets, 60% of our business. But Nexus is also a company that, whatever you are, wherever you operate, in Africa or in the US, we try to deploy innovative projects and provide our members with innovative services. I will go fairly fast due to the time constraint. As a summary, when it comes to our community, we are now present in 122 countries. That's where we deploy our innovative projects. We have in total, and that's a number that you can recall, 1,500 companies with a Nexus, consolidated into 122 countries and 118 members. That's Nexus today, after 4 years and a half. And we do 20% of our business on heavy duty already. So, just want to spend some time on innovation. We have, as I said, invested a lot on education with Nexus Academy, 5,000 people being trained this year, an enormous resource that is spent on what is critical for the development of the aftermarket in emerging markets. I told you about M&A, I told you about the marketplace. We have launched a garage concept that has already, for instance, in France, over 200 garages. We are busy with telematics, and we have 2 private labels that enable us not to increase the private label business of our members, but to facilitate the way our members are handling private label with more quality and less time spent on private label programs. Now to finish, I'd like to finish with something I would say you are more familiar with. I told you Nexus is an events machine. We are a huge community with 122 countries, lots of different cultures. So there is a big social activity that is first focused on our annual business forum in Abu Dhabi. So we do meet 2 years in a row in a different location, all suppliers and members, for 3 days, in which we try to increase the interactivity at global level between the global teams of Wolf and all our members. We do the same for heavy duty for the first time, so we're going to have a very specific approach on heavy duty. Of course, Automechanika, for the first time we are present in Automechanika with a booth. We are starting to organize some events in some niche activities like the classic car industry. The classic car industry is already quite big. You know, if you take France, it represents 2 million cars, 20,000 employees. So, for the first time, we're going to organize a classic car rally. First year, this year in France, and then we'll move progressively to other countries. And this involves suppliers that support the classic car industry and some of our members that are involved in the classic car industry. And Nexus Academy, I told you, 5,000 people throughout plenty of sessions under what we call the Nexus Academy School. So thank you very much. I tried to do what I could in 20 minutes, and I hope you took a few messages out of it. Thank you very much.
Very critical points and sharing very thought-provoking points. Thank you so much. So I think he has to go shortly, but maybe if you have any